The spaces we inhabit are never neutral because walls and light constantly shape how we see and feel. A bright room seems to expand, while a dark one contracts and closes in. Walls resist change, holding their ground, while light bends and slips through openings, softening edges or breaking barriers. This ongoing tension is more than design. It is a quiet struggle we experience every day. In this series, we will explore how perception, history, culture, and technology reveal the war between walls and light and how we find our place within it. When you step into a room, your eyes do more than record shapes and colors. They measure, compare, and estimate where the limits of the space are. Yet those limits are not fixed in perception. The way light falls on the surfaces changes how the brain positions the boundaries. Brightness pushes the edges away, while darkness pulls them closer. The walls, the ceiling, and the floor do not move, but they feel as if they do, because the eye treats brightness as distance and darkness as nearness. A ceiling painted in white or another light shade seems higher than it really is. The same ceiling painted in black or deep blue feels as if it drops lower. Nothing in the building's structure has changed. The beams, plaster, and joists all remain where they were. But the ceiling is no longer in the same place for your senses. This is the power of brightness as expansion and darkness as contraction. It is not imagination. It is a direct result of how vision interprets reflected light. Walls behave the same way. Side walls painted pale colors seem to lean outward. The width of the room grows in the mind of the person standing inside. If those walls are painted in dark tones, they seem to press inward, making the space narrower. A rear wall painted white can make a room feel longer, while a rear wall painted in a dark color seems to step forward and shorten the room. The effect is immediate. You walk into two rooms with identical measurements, but one feels spacious and the other feels tight, depending only on how much light the walls send back to your eyes. Floors also participate in this shifting sense of space. A pale floor reflects light and suggests openness. It gives the body a sense of air and room to move. A dark floor absorbs light and feels heavier, pulling attention downward. This weight changes posture and movement. People tread more softly, stand more still, and sense the room as closer. These responses are not choices. They are automatic reactions to the way light has been absorbed or reflected. Imagine a studio apartment in a city. In one version, the ceiling is painted white, the walls are pale gray, and the floor is light oak. A window lets sunlight flood the surfaces. The room feels open, as if its boundaries are further away than the floor plan suggests. Now picture the same apartment with deep navy walls, a charcoal ceiling, and dark walnut flooring. Even with the same window, the surfaces capture more light than they release. The ceiling lowers, the walls tighten, and the floor grounds the body. The apartment is no smaller on paper, but it feels smaller in experience. This is the negotiation between walls and light. Classrooms show another example. Two rooms are built with the same dimensions, 30 feet long, 20 feet wide, with a 10-foot ceiling. In one room, the walls are cream, the ceiling white, the floor light wood. In the other, the walls are dark gray, the ceiling slate, the floor a deep brown. In the bright room, students spread out, talk louder, and move with energy. In the dark room, they sit closer together, speak more quietly, and focus sooner. Teachers may call the first room lively and the second room calm, but the root cause lies in perception. Brightness signals retreat, darkness signals approach, and the eyes dictate the response. Corridors reveal the same principle. A bright corridor makes the end wall seem far away, encouraging people to walk faster. A dark corridor makes the end wall feel near, so the pace slows. Designers in hospitals and airports often use bright finishes to reduce the sense of confinement and to keep people moving. In museums, darker finishes slow movement and create the impression of intimacy, giving visitors more time with each exhibit. In both cases, brightness and darkness are tools that shift behavior without anyone noticing. Even in homes, these illusions shape daily life. A family dining room painted in warm, deep colors feels intimate, encouraging closer conversation. A kitchen with white walls and a pale ceiling feels open, inviting longer stays and broader activity. Bedrooms painted in dark shades often feel like retreats, closing in to provide a sense of rest, while children's playrooms painted bright feel larger, giving more energy to play. The dimensions of the house remain the same, but the experience of space changes with the way light and surfaces work together. This relationship between brightness and perception ties back to how vision functions. The eyes do not measure physical distance with rulers. They rely on cues such as contrast, shadow, and the amount of reflected light. A bright surface sends a stronger signal, and the brain reads it as further away. A dark surface sends a weaker signal, and the brain reads it as closer. The result is that a ceiling painted white seems to float upward, while the same ceiling painted black presses down. The architecture has not shifted, but the perception has. In daily life, this effect changes not only how rooms feel, but also how people behave in them. A cafe with pale walls and daylight-filled windows seems open and relaxed, encouraging long visits. A bar with dark walls and dim ceilings feels enclosed, prompting shorter stays and quieter voices. Offices with bright walls feel larger, supporting more movement, while meeting rooms with darker walls feel smaller, encouraging focus. None of these results come from square footage. They come from how the eye negotiates brightness and darkness. The boundaries of a room are not fixed in perception. They expand with light and contract with shadow. The same set of walls, floor, and ceiling can be experienced as either open or closed, depending on how much light the surfaces reflect. Every time someone enters a space, their senses negotiate with these illusions. Brightness convinces the eye that distance has grown. Darkness convinces it that distance has shrunk. The war between walls and light begins with this subtle but constant movement of boundaries. Color does more than decorate a room. It shapes how the walls interact with light and how people feel in the space. A red wall, a pale gray ceiling, or a glossy black door each carry a different weight because color changes the way light is absorbed or reflected. The effect is not only visual, it changes the mood of the room and how the body responds. When people describe a room as cozy, open, heavy, or bright, they are responding to the work that color and finish have done with the available light. Reflectivity is one of the main factors. A wall painted in a glossy finish reflects light directly back into the room. The surface becomes brighter, more alive, and draws the eye quickly. A matte finish diffuses the light, scattering it and softening the effect. Two walls painted in the same color will not feel the same if one is glossy and the other is matte. A glossy dark blue wall may shimmer and call attention to itself, while a matte dark blue wall may absorb light and fall into the background. The finish decides whether the wall advances into focus or retreats into shadow. Texture has a similar role. A smooth plaster wall sends light back evenly, creating a calm and consistent surface. A rough brick wall breaks light into fragments, casting tiny shadows and highlights across its face. The same paint applied to both surfaces will not read the same color. The smooth wall will look uniform, while the textured wall will appear varied, with some areas brighter and others darker. This variation can make the room feel more complex and layered, or in some cases more chaotic. Designers know this instinctively. A single color on drywall produces a different mood than the same color on exposed stone. Color is also vulnerable to metamerism, the tendency for a surface to appear as one color in one kind of light and as a different color in another. A navy wall may look blue under daylight, but black under incandescent bulbs. A beige paint can look warm and creamy in the morning sun, then dull and gray under fluorescent light. This is not because the wall itself changes. It is because the light shining on it changes in spectrum. Each light source has its own balance of wavelengths. The eye interprets those wavelengths in relation to the pigments on the wall. When the wavelengths shift, the perception of color shifts too. This is why people often bring paint swatches home before choosing. The color in the store rarely matches the color in the living room at night. Metamerism can cause frustration. Someone may choose a cheerful yellow from the catalog, only to find that in their north-facing room the same color turns flat and muddy. A green that looks fresh in daylight may appear harsh and artificial under LED lighting. The lie is not in the paint, but in the interaction between pigment and light source. Without testing, it is impossible to know exactly how a color will perform in its intended setting. For this reason, painters and designers often look at samples at different times of day and under different light bulbs before making a decision. The psychological effects of these shifts are strong. Bright colors that reflect more light tend to make people feel more energized. Pale blue walls in an office can create a sense of calm alertness, while white walls in a gallery can make the space feel clean and expansive. Darker colors that absorb light change the mood. A library painted in deep green or burgundy may feel more grounded, encouraging slower thought and longer focus. A bedroom painted in charcoal may feel more enclosed, leading to a sense of safety and rest. None of these feelings come from the dimensions of the room. They come from the way light interacts with the chosen colors. Imagine two cafes on the same street. One has walls painted in glossy white, a smooth plaster ceiling, and light wood flooring. Sunlight bounces through the space, and at night the electric lights reflect across every surface. Customers feel awake and linger for conversation. The other cafe has matte terracotta walls, exposed brick, and dark wood flooring. The same square footage feels smaller, warmer, and more private. People speak more quietly and stay for shorter periods. The design of each cafe uses color, texture, and finish to guide mood and behavior, even though the architecture is similar. Even small details matter. A door painted in high-gloss red becomes a focal point, drawing attention and signaling importance. A door painted in matte black may seem to vanish into the wall, weaving the frame and handle as the only visual cues. A ceiling in glossy paint reflects light and can make a room feel taller, while a ceiling in flat paint absorbs light and feels lower. These choices are not just stylistic. They shape the perception of volume and atmosphere in tangible ways. The interplay of color and finish is most obvious when natural and artificial light compete. A living room painted in a neutral beige may look balanced in daylight, but shift to an orange tone under warm incandescent bulbs in the evening. A gray wall can look cool under daylight, but turn greenish under certain fluorescent lights. These shifts can make a room feel inconsistent, cozy at one time and dull at another, open in the morning and cramped at night. People sometimes describe this as the room having moods. But it's really the light exposing the unstable nature of color perception. One way to see this is through clothing. A shirt that looks navy under a street lamp may appear black in a dim room and bright blue under a midday sun. The same principle applies to walls. When you paint a wall, you are not simply choosing a color. You are choosing how that color will respond to every light source it encounters. The brain accepts each version as truth, even though they contradict one another. This is the trap of metamerism, and it's unavoidable. The cozy versus exposed quality of spaces comes from this same interaction. Dark matte colors enclose. They hold light in and reduce reflection, making the room feel smaller and closer. This can be comfortable, like a shelter. Light, glossy colors expose. They release light, expand boundaries, and make the room feel larger. This can feel liberating, but sometimes it feels stark. Each choice guides how people behave and how they think while inside. A bright conference room may keep workers alert, while a dim study may help them concentrate. The walls and their finishes play an active role in this outcome. The war between walls and light is fought in these small decisions. Reflectivity directs where attention goes. Texture scatters or unifies light. Metamerism shifts the truth of color from hour to hour. People live inside these effects without noticing them, but their minds and moods respond all the same. A room is not only a box of materials. It's a stage where light and surface negotiate, and color is the voice they use to argue. Walls have always stood for solidity. From the first shelters built of mud and timber to the concrete towers of modern cities, they exist to enclose, protect, and divide. They are the most visible expression of architecture's practical need to make boundaries. A wall keeps the weather out. It keeps enemies away. It defines where one space ends and another begins. In this sense, walls have served as barriers for as long as humans have built. The simplest hut depended on them for survival, and the grandest fortress relied on them for defense. When people first stacked stone to make circular huts, the purpose was clear. The wall was a shield. It stood against wind, rain, and wild animals. The thickness of the stone carried weight and confidence. Families inside felt safer because the wall resisted everything beyond it. Later, when cities grew, walls surrounded whole communities. Ancient Jericho, with its stone ramparts, or the Great Wall of China, stretching across mountains, both show how walls became more than practical tools. They became symbols of security and permanence. Their solidity spoke louder than any words could about endurance and strength. Shelters built in timber or brick carried the same logic, though the scale changed. A cottage with thick brick walls in England or a wooden log house in Scandinavia worked in the same way as ancient stone enclosures. They were barriers between the fragile human body and the forces outside. Fireplaces burned inside, warmth collected, and the walls held it in. Without them, survival through winter would have been impossible. The wall was not decoration. It was life itself. In time, walls also became enclosures with social meaning. A prison wall kept people inside as much as it kept intruders out. A monastery wall drew a line between sacred space and the outside world. The solidity of the wall did more than hold weight. It communicated the separation of roles and the division of power. In this way, walls served as instruments of order. They stood as permanent reminders of where someone belonged and where they could not go. The vocabulary of materials gives this solidity its character. Stone is the oldest and most commanding. It resists weather, fire, and time. Walk past the ruins of a Roman aqueduct and the sense of endurance is immediate. The stones have seen centuries, yet they still stand. Brick followed as a more flexible choice, easier to shape and stack, but still heavy and lasting. Entire cities, like those in the Netherlands, grew in shades of brick, each wall giving a sense of human scale but also of stubborn solidity. Concrete came later, mixing sand, water, and cement to create walls that could rise higher and stretch longer than stone or brick ever allowed. The vast blocks of brutalist buildings in the 20th century show how concrete carries the same role of permanence, but with even greater force. It does not crumble easily, and it does not yield to light. Glass sits in this vocabulary as both an exception and a challenge. At first, glass was used in small panes set within stone or wood frames. It allowed light through while the wall itself remained dominant. In the 19th and 20th centuries, larger sheets of glass changed the balance. Skyscrapers, wrapped in curtain walls of glass, seemed to abandon solidity in favor of transparency. Yet glass is still a wall. It divides inside from outside, protects from wind and rain, and sets a boundary, even if it appears to vanish. Its fragility contrasts with the weight of stone and concrete. But its presence proves that even the most transparent surface serves the same function. It resists intrusion, it defines limits, and it insists on enclosure. Walls resist illumination not by rejecting light outright, but by shaping it. A thick stone wall with a small window admits only a narrow shaft of daylight. The rest of the surface remains heavy, absorbing sunlight and casting deep shadow. A brick wall, painted dark red, softens light, turning it into warmth, but not brilliance. A concrete wall, raw and unfinished, can feel cold because it holds light without reflecting it. Each material interacts with illumination, but the overall impression is one of control. Light can strike, but the wall decides how much to reveal and how much to hold back. Think of a medieval castle. Its walls, often 10 feet thick, stand as immovable actors. Arrow slits cut into the masonry admit minimal light, enough to see, but not enough to brighten. Inside, torches and fires provided most of the illumination. The wall's role was clear. It would not let the outside world intrude, except through narrow, controlled openings. The stone absorbed light and stood firm. The play between brightness and solidity was weighted in favor of the wall. The same principle appears in monastic cloisters, where high walls enclosed quiet gardens, holding the light at bay and creating pockets of shadow for contemplation. In a modern city, concrete towers continue the role. The material might look different, but the effect is similar. A windowless facade of concrete rises blank against the sky, giving little to light and refusing to retreat. Inside, artificial light must replace what the wall denies. The building's exterior becomes a statement of closure, of turning away from the shifting play of sunlight. It is the wall declaring its control. Glass buildings complicate the story. They appear open, filled with light, yet the glass is a controlled surface. It reflects as much as it emits. From one angle, the sun bounces off, creating glare that hides what lies behind. From another, it allows vision inward, but only under certain lighting conditions. At night, when interior lights glow, the glass wall reveals what it holds. By day, the same wall may act like a mirror, resisting illumination by turning it back outward. Even in transparency, the wall asserts itself as a boundary. Walls have always been immovable actors in this dialogue with light. They stand as physical proof of human effort to enclose, to resist, and to shape. Light can wash across them, highlight their texture, or soften their edges, but the wall remains. It does not move with the sun. It does not dissolve with shadow. Its role is to hold the line. Whether made of stone, brick, concrete, or glass, the wall exists to resist illumination even as it engages with it. It is the solid side of the war, the constant partner against the shifting nature of light. Walls may be solid, but they are not passive. Their surfaces act like strategies in a long negotiation with light. A wall can reflect, absorb, or diffuse illumination, and each choice changes how people read the space around them. These surface qualities are not accidents. They are selected, applied, and refined by builders and designers who understand that the outer skin of a wall is as important as its structural core. The material beneath may hold the weight, but the surface decides how the wall behaves in the ongoing battle with light. Reflective surfaces return light directly. A wall coated in high-gloss paint or clad in polished stone will bounce light back into the room. The effect can be sharp, drawing the eye to the wall itself or to the brightness it throws into the air. Reflective walls can make spaces appear brighter than they truly are, which is why lobbies, showrooms, and galleries often rely on them. When a visitor enters such a space, they see not only the wall but the play of light across its surface. This can expand the sense of volume and height, making the room feel more open and active. Yet reflection has limits. Too much gloss can produce glare, which strains the eye and reduces comfort. The wall, in this case, has chosen a strategy of dominance, commanding attention by sending light back as forcefully as possible. Absorptive surfaces do the opposite. A matte wall, a dark fabric panel, or unfinished timber takes in light rather than returning it. These surfaces mute brightness and soften edges. A deep red wall painted in flat finish will not shine. It will seem to draw light into itself. The result is intimacy. Rooms with absorptive walls feel smaller, closer, and calmer. The walls advance, enclosing the body in their shadow. Cinemas often use such finishes to keep attention on the screen. Libraries and private dining rooms use them to create quiet and focus. The wall strategy here is one of containment, holding light rather than giving it back, directing attention inward rather than outward. Diffuse surfaces spread light across their textures. A plaster wall, for example, scatters illumination, producing a balanced glow rather than a harsh return. Textured surfaces, like brick or stone, do the same, though with more variation. Diffusion avoids both the glare of reflection and the depth of absorption. It sits between the two, allowing walls to remain present without overwhelming or retreating. Many homes rely on diffusion because it creates a steady environment. The eye can rest on such surfaces without effort, and the space feels stable. The wall strategy is balance, neither dominating nor disappearing. Color adds another layer to these strategies. Light hues act as amplifiers. A pale yellow wall painted in semi-gloss can brighten an entire room, reflecting daylight and artificial light alike. Dark hues act as silencers. A navy wall in matte finish holds light back and makes the space feel enclosed. Even within a single hue, finish changes the strategy. A glossy navy wall may feel dramatic and commanding, while a matte navy wall feels muted and quiet. The choice of finish determines whether the wall steps forward or withdraws. Designers use this with precision. A feature wall may be painted in gloss to draw attention, while surrounding walls in matte serve as background. Consider a living room with one wall painted in glossy teal and the others in matte cream. The teal wall catches the light, becoming the focal point, while the cream walls diffuse light gently, keeping the space balanced. The room feels both lively and calm, a result of the different strategies chosen for each wall. Now imagine the same room with all walls painted in matte charcoal. The light disappears into the surfaces, and the space contracts. The atmosphere becomes intimate, almost secretive. The strategies have changed, and the battle between walls and light produces a different outcome. Architecture at the scale of cities reveals these strategies even more clearly. Brutalism, the movement of the mid-20th century, relied on thick, opaque walls of concrete. The surfaces were often raw, unfinished, and absorptive. They muted light, producing heavy shadows and a sense of mass. Buildings like Boston City Hall or London's Barbican Center confront light directly but refuse to yield. Their surfaces swallow brightness, asserting their presence through weight and shadow. For many observers, these buildings feel imposing, even oppressive, because their walls use absorption as a weapon. They resist illumination, pulling it into their rough textures and holding it there. The wall wins by sheer force, and light is reduced to narrow highlights along edges and corners. Modernist transparency, on the other hand, took the opposite approach. Buildings like the Seagram Building in New York or the Apple Store Glass Cube rely on glass facades that admit light rather than deny it. These walls appear to vanish, yet they remain boundaries. Their strategy is reflection and transmission at once. During the day, glass facades mirror the sky, clouds, and neighboring buildings, turning light back toward the city. At night, when the interiors glow, the same walls reveal what lies inside. The wall has not disappeared, it has shifted its tactic. It plays with light rather than resisting it, sometimes opening, sometimes closing, depending on the time of day. Where brutalism stood immovable, glass facades perform a dance with illumination, allowing light to define the building as much as the building defines light. These two movements show how surfaces change the perception of walls. Concrete, heavy and absorptive, makes structures feel solid and unyielding. Glass, reflective and transparent, makes structures feel light and open. Both materials serve as combatants in the war with light, but their strategies are different. One resists, the other adapts. In both cases, the surface decides how the wall engages with its environment and with the attention of the people who stand before it. Every wall, no matter how plain, carries a surface that shapes its relationship with light. Whether it reflects, absorbs, or diffuses, it chooses a strategy in the ongoing struggle to control perception. The finish, the color, and the material are the tools it uses. Some walls shine and demand attention. Some retreat into shadow. Others hold a balance, steady and neutral. Together, these surfaces form the tactics of architecture, the ways in which walls hold their ground against the shifting, relentless presence of light. Daylight enters every space as a moving force. It changes hour by hour, never repeating the same pattern twice. Sunrise, noon, and sunset mark the rhythm of its shifts, and each stage alters the way walls and surfaces behave. Light is not static. It acts like an army, advancing across floors, scaling walls, and retreating as shadows form. The war between walls and light begins here, in the daily theater of natural illumination. At sunrise, the light is low and warm. The angle stretches shadows long across the ground, pulling forms out and exaggerating their presence. A wall that seems flat at noon takes on deep relief in the early morning as window frames, cornices, and even small imperfections throw shadows many times their actual size. Rooms facing east feel open and almost porous at this hour, as if the light has punctured their defenses. The colors of paint shift toward gold and amber, making even neutral tones glow. A white wall can appear orange. A gray wall may turn pink. The light is soft, yet insistent, and it defines the start of the battle by showing walls in their most vulnerable state, when their surfaces reveal every texture and variation. By noon, the sun rises to its highest point, and the light becomes harsh and direct. Shadows shrink or vanish altogether, pressing close to the objects that cast them. This creates a flatness. Surfaces lose some of the relief they displayed in the morning. A plaster wall that seemed alive with texture at dawn may now look blank and featureless. The brightness fills every corner of a room, reducing contrast and making boundaries feel farther away. Spaces expand in perception, but they also feel less intimate. The noon light overwhelms, spreading across surfaces without discrimination. Walls can resist to some degree with absorptive finishes or darker colors, but even they cannot hold back the flood of illumination. At this moment, light is at its strongest, claiming dominance over form and space. As the day moves toward evening, the sun lowers again, and the character of light changes once more. Sunset brings long, angled rays similar to those of sunrise, but warmer and heavier. The light is saturated with red and gold, painting walls with deeper tones than they carry in daylight. A beige wall can look rich and dramatic. A blue wall shifts toward purple. Shadows lengthen again, stretching across floors and rising up walls in dynamic patterns. The late sun highlights edges, reveals textures, and gives depth to even the plainest surfaces. Rooms facing west feel alive in this moment, full of contrast and drama. The walls are both revealed and transformed, no longer solid barriers, but screens for light's final performance of the day. Shadows act as soldiers in this ongoing conflict. They march across surfaces, reshape boundaries, and sometimes take control of the room. In the morning, they exaggerate form. In the afternoon, they retreat and make walls seem smooth. In the evening, they return in force, giving the architecture depth and weight. Consider a staircase in natural light. At sunrise, shadows from the balustrade stretch far, drawing diagonal lines across the wall. By noon, the shadows vanish, leaving the staircase plain. At sunset, the shadows return. But they fall in the opposite direction, cutting across the wall with a different geometry. The staircase has not changed, but its appearance has shifted 3 times. The shadows are the messengers of light, showing its movement and reminding us that no surface is ever stable under their influence. Seasonal changes add another layer. In summer, the sun climbs higher in the sky, and the noon light floods spaces with intensity. Shadows grow shorter, and rooms can feel washed out, as if walls have lost their ability to resist. In winter, the sun remains low, even at noon. Shadows lengthen throughout the day, creating a sense of enclosure. A building that feels open and bright in July may feel closed and heavy in January, even if its walls and finishes remain the same. The latitude of a place intensifies this variation. In northern regions, summer brings almost endless daylight, and walls are bathed in brightness long into the evening. In winter, daylight may last only a few hours, leaving walls to retreat into shadow for most of the day. Near the equator, the difference is less extreme, but the intensity of noon light can be overwhelming, forcing buildings to rely on deep overhangs or thick walls to hold it back. Examples of these variations appear everywhere. In Scandinavia, architects design houses with large windows to capture scarce winter light. The low angle of the sun brings illumination deep into rooms, stretching across floors and brightening walls far from the openings. In the Mediterranean, houses often have small windows and thick walls, a response to the fierce noon sun that would otherwise overwhelm interiors. The walls in these homes serve as shields, resisting the glare and releasing only narrow shafts of controlled light. In each case, the natural army of daylight shapes how walls are built and how they perform. Even within a single day, the difference between direct sunlight and diffuse light alters perception. A cloudy morning produces a flat, even illumination, softening shadows and muting colors. A sunny morning, by contrast, fills the same room with sharp contrasts, bright highlights, and deep shadows. The wall remains the same, but the mood of the space shifts completely. People sitting in the room feel the change, even if they cannot explain it. Their attention moves with the light, drawn to patterns, textures, or expanses of flat brightness, depending on the conditions outside. This constant movement makes natural light unpredictable, yet it is this unpredictability that gives it power. Walls may hold steady, but daylight never does. It advances, retreats, and shifts in color and angle, keeping spaces alive and unsettled. Sunrise reveals texture. Noon flattens form. Sunset dramatizes edges, and seasons redraw the length and presence of shadows. The natural army of light fights not with uniformity, but with endless change, and every wall must adapt to its tactics. Artificial light has always been more than a tool for vision. It is a force that reshapes how walls and spaces are experienced. Where natural light moves with the sun, artificial light can be controlled, extended, and manipulated. From firelight to gas lamps, from incandescent bulbs to fluorescent tubes and LEDs, each step in the history of human-made light has changed not just how long people could stay awake, but how they felt in relation to the walls around them. The first interiors lit by fire carried an atmosphere of warmth and danger. A flame flickered and threw shadows across rough stone or timber walls. Cavemen gathered near the fire because its light defined a safe circle inside the darkness. The wall surfaces became animated by shadows, alive with motion. Fire was never steady. It gave a room intimacy, but also instability. The light was too dim to banish the dark corners, and the walls seemed to lean in, beyond the reach of the flame. Here, the balance favored enclosure. The fire lit the immediate space, but the walls remained in control, advancing through shadow and limiting perception. Oil lamps and candles expanded this circle of light. A candle on a table or a lamp mounted on a wall gave steadier illumination, though still limited. Rooms took on a layered quality. Bright zones close to the flame, soft gradations farther away, and near darkness at the edges. Walls carried pools of light, but their surfaces still swallowed much of it. This was not an equal battle. Light offered brief relief, but the wall remained heavy. A cathedral, lit by candles in the Middle Ages, glowed faintly, but the stone columns and walls dominated. Shadows filled the nave, and the structure kept its authority. Artificial light in this era was a supplement, not a conqueror. Gas lighting in the 19th century marked a turning point. For the first time, whole rooms and even city streets could be flooded with reliable brightness. Gas lamps washed walls in a more uniform glow, reducing the dominance of shadow. Interiors changed in mood. Social spaces like theaters, ballrooms, and train stations grew larger and more complex because gaslight could fill them. The walls still carried mass, but it no longer held the same level of control. Light had begun to push back, claiming more territory and exposing surfaces that once hid in darkness. With gas came not only illumination, but also a sense of spectacle. The wall was still present, but it had to share attention with the brilliance around it. The arrival of the incandescent bulb made artificial light portable and personal. One bulb in the center of a ceiling could expose every corner of a modest room. For the first time, the walls had little refuge. Their surfaces, once cloaked in shadow, stood bare. Families noticed details in plaster, paint, and wallpaper at night that had been invisible before. The incandescent bulb democratized light. It was cheap, easy to use, and available to everyone. Yet it also introduced new tensions. The harshness of a single overhead bulb could flatten a room, washing away depth. The war between walls and light entered a new phase. Walls no longer set the terms of visibility. Light dictated how they appeared. Fluorescent tubes followed in the 20th century, filling offices, schools, and hospitals with uniform illumination. Walls under fluorescent light lose texture and warmth. They appear pale, often washed out. Shadows are minimized, leaving surfaces looking flat. While efficient, fluorescent light is relentless. It resists intimacy and makes rooms feel clinical. Walls in this environment become passive backdrops, stripped of their depth. Fluorescent light seizes control, leveling every surface into sameness. The war shifts once more. Light dominates, but at the cost of richness and character. LED technology has added another layer of control. LEDs can be tuned to different color temperatures, from warm amber to cool blue. They can be dimmed, focused, or spread. A wall under LED light can appear cozy at one moment and stark the next, depending on the settings. Designers use LEDs to sculpt spaces, highlighting architectural features or softening edges. Unlike fire or incandescent bulbs, LEDs are not limited by heat or fragility. They can be hidden in coves, embedded in floors, or arranged in patterns across ceilings. Walls under LEDs face an opponent that adapts constantly. Light can conceal flaws, exaggerate textures, or shift color perception. It is no longer a simple presence, but a tool of manipulation. Designers exploit this control to produce specific moods. A restaurant may wash one wall in warm amber light to create intimacy while using cooler light on another wall to suggest openness. A gallery may use spotlights to draw the eye to certain surfaces while leaving others in dimness. The walls are the stage, but the lighting design decides which walls receive attention and which fade. Unlike natural light, which changes with time and weather, artificial light is human-made strategy. It is selective and deliberate, and walls must respond to its choices. The Kimball Art Museum in Fort Worth, designed by Louis Kahn, offers a striking case study in the balance between natural and artificial light. Kahn believed that light was the soul of architecture. At the Kimball, he designed barrel-vaulted ceilings with narrow skylights that run along their length. Sunlight enters the building indirectly, filtered by reflectors that soften and spread it across the walls and galleries. The result is a natural glow that changes with the day, yet avoids glare. The walls are never harshly exposed. Instead, they are bathed in an even, shifting illumination that honors their material quality. Kahn also recognized that daylight alone could not sustain the museum. He integrated artificial lighting systems that complemented the natural flow. At night, hidden fixtures mimic the softness of daylight, ensuring continuity. The Kimball shows how walls and light can cooperate rather than fight, each acknowledging the power of the other. In this example, light does not overwhelm, and the walls do not dominate. Instead, the design sets terms for their interaction. The natural sun enters as a living presence, while artificial systems extend its influence after sunset. Visitors walking through the museum sense both the solidity of the walls and the vitality of the light. The balance is intentional, not accidental. Kahn's work demonstrates that artificial light, used with care, can join the natural army rather than replace it. The walls remain strong, but light becomes an equal combatant, shaping the way art and space are seen. Light has always carried meanings beyond its physical presence. People have seen it as a symbol of revelation, freedom, and transcendence. When light enters a space, it does more than brighten surfaces. It carries with it the weight of ideas that stretch across cultures and centuries. In this way, light fights its battle with walls, not only as illumination, but also as metaphor, while walls answer with their own message of permanence, order, and control. The link between light and revelation appears in countless traditions. When light strikes after darkness, it brings clarity. To see is to know, and to know is to be released from confusion. The first rays of dawn have always suggested awakening and renewal. In religious stories, visions and truths often arrive as beams of light, cutting through uncertainty. A shaft of sunlight through a cloud can seem like a message, not because the light itself has changed, but because people read it as revelation. In this symbolic sense, walls that block light stand for concealment and ignorance, while light that penetrates them brings truth. Freedom is also tied to light. Open skies and bright spaces have long been associated with liberation, while dark cells and enclosed rooms symbolize captivity. A prisoner who sees a ray of light through a small window may feel a moment of hope even though the wall still confines them. Light in this way suggests possibility. It does not erase the wall, but it hints that beyond the solid enclosure lies another world. Walls fix boundaries. Light denies them by slipping through cracks and openings. This tension fuels the symbolic power of both. One asserts control, the other resists it. Transcendence is the third role light has played in culture. To be bathed in light has often meant to step into another state of being, one that rises above the material world. Sacred art, whether Christian icons surrounded by golden halos or Buddhist depictions of enlightenment, uses light to show spiritual transformation. Walls cannot match this quality. They root people in the here and now, in matter and weight. Light suggests the scent beyond the ordinary, while walls hold the body to earth. Architecture has always expressed this conflict. Gothic cathedrals are a clear example. Builders in medieval Europe raised walls of stone, massive and unyielding, yet they pierced them with stained glass windows. These windows did not weaken the walls structurally, but they transformed them symbolically. Light filtered through colored glass flooded the interior with patterns of red, blue, and gold. The stone remained firm, a reminder of order and permanence, but the light carried the sense of divine revelation. Worshippers standing in a cathedral felt both the weight of the walls and the immaterial beauty of the light. The two forces worked together to produce awe, one through control, the other through transcendence. In Islamic architecture, the mashrabiyah performs a similar role. These carved wooden screens cover windows, allowing filtered light to enter while maintaining privacy and shade. The wall remains intact, but the latticework transforms it into a surface alive with shifting patterns of sunlight. As the day moves, the light changes, casting intricate shadows across floors and walls. The mashrabiyah shows how culture has used light symbolically to balance visibility and concealment, freedom and control. The wall remains a barrier, but the filtered light becomes a symbol of subtle revelation, a reminder of divine order expressed in geometry. Japanese shoji screens reveal another approach. Made of wood and translucent paper, they act as walls but allow light to pass through. The effect is a soft, diffused glow that fills interiors with calm. The wall does not disappear, but it yields enough to let light create atmosphere. The shoji screen represents the idea that light need not arrive in dramatic beams or stained glass brilliance. It can arrive as gentle presence, a symbol of harmony rather than domination. The solid framework of the screen provides order, while the glowing paper surface provides transcendence through simplicity. These traditions demonstrate that light and walls always carry dual meanings. Walls speak of permanence, stability, and authority. They set the limits of space and enforce separation. Their message is one of order, whether in the stone of a fortress, the brick of a home, or the concrete of a government building. Light, by contrast, carries the opposite. It resists permanence by shifting through the day. It ignores order by slipping where it should not go. It refuses control by changing how surfaces appear. The two together create spaces that feel meaningful because they express both sides of human experience, the need for boundaries and the longing to surpass them. One can walk from culture to culture and see the same dialogue repeated. The thick walls of ancient temples in Egypt allowed only narrow shafts of light, turning them into instruments of revelation. The structures declared power through stone, but the small openings admitted light at specific times, such as solstices, aligning human ritual with cosmic order. In Renaissance churches, domes and clerestories lifted light high above, suggesting the heavens themselves breaking through. In mosques, lamps and calligraphy paired with filtered daylight to turn interiors into places where order and transcendence meet. In Japanese tea houses, the low light softened walls and gave intimacy, while the glow through paper screens suggested a world beyond the immediate. Walls in each case speak in the language of matter. They hold weight, resist weather, and control access. Their symbolism is rooted in permanence and stability. Light speaks in the language of perception. It reveals, it changes, it slips, and it transforms. Its symbolism is rooted in freedom, transcendence, and truth. The global traditions of architecture show how people have used both languages together. No building can exist without walls, and none can inspire without light. The war between them is not only physical, but cultural, with each side carrying ideas that reach beyond the materials themselves. Victor Hugo's Les Miserables presents one of the clearest images of walls and light locked in conflict. The barricades, built from paving stones, beams, and broken furniture, serve as temporary walls in the streets of Paris. They are meant to keep out soldiers and defend the revolutionaries who stand behind them. Yet these same walls also trap those inside. Once erected, the barricades limit escape, turning open streets into enclosures. Hugo describes them as both shelter and prison. They are heavy, rough, and unforgiving, cutting the rebels off from the larger city and pressing them into narrow, enclosed spaces. Within this confinement, light appears as revelation. When Gavroche climbs the barricade in open daylight to gather ammunition, his bravery is illuminated for all to see. Light exposes him, giving his act clarity, but it also marks him for death. Enjolras, in his final stand, is framed by the glow of daylight, his conviction revealed even as the walls close in on him. Jean Valjean moves between light and shadow, slipping through darkness to save Marius, and bringing flashes of illumination in moments of despair. For Hugo, walls embody order, permanence, and control, while light cuts through them as freedom and mercy. The barricade itself becomes a metaphor, a wall that seems protective but ultimately encloses. While light breaks through to show truth and possibility, however brief, the tension between walls and light is equally clear in the contrast between cathedrals and castles. Castles were designed to keep enemies out and inhabitants safe. Their thick walls, narrow windows, and deep shadows projected strength. A castle's interiors were dim and confined, lit only by torches or small slits in the masonry. The darkness reinforced the feeling of security, but also of limitation. Walls dominated, and light entered only in small doses. The fortress was an architecture of control, where permanence outweighed perception. Cathedrals, built during the same centuries, carried the opposite message. Gothic builders sought to bring light into stone. They pushed walls upward, thinned them with pointed arches, and filled them with stained glass. Sunlight entered through vast rose windows, transforming interiors into fields of color. The walls were still massive, but the glass turned them into surfaces alive with shifting light. Worshippers stepping inside were meant to feel awe, not from the weight of stone, but from the radiance that overcame it. Light became the symbol of the divine, while the walls surrendered part of their authority to allow that transcendence. Where castles kept light out, cathedrals invited it in. Both structures used walls as instruments, but one emphasized enclosure and defense, while the other embraced revelation and spiritual freedom. This battle between walls and light did not end in the medieval period. Cities became new fields of conflict. In the early 20th century, New York City faced a crisis created by walls that grew taller and cast deeper shadows. Skyscrapers, rising higher with steel frames and elevators, transformed Manhattan into a vertical forest of walls. These towers blocked sunlight from reaching streets, leaving pedestrians in shadow for much of the day. The walls had grown too powerful, dominating not only the skyline, but also daily experience on the ground. The public complained about streets turning into canyons of darkness. Businesses and residents felt the pressure of enclosure in a city that should have promised openness. The response was the 1916 zoning law, one of the first of its kind. It required new tall buildings to step back as they rose, creating tiered shapes that allowed light to filter down to the street. This regulation was a recognition that light was not just aesthetic, but essential. The law forced walls to yield, to cut into their mass, and to share the city with daylight. The setback skyscraper became the symbol of this compromise. Buildings like the Empire State and the Chrysler rose to great heights, but their stepbacks allowed light and air to reach lower levels. The zoning law showed that even in dense urban conditions, light could not be ignored. It had to be written into the rules of construction. The struggle continues in modern cities. Towers of glass and steel cast long shadows, while zoning boards and community groups debate the rights to sunlight for parks, streets, and neighboring buildings. In some places, laws now protect access to light, ensuring that new walls do not dominate entirely. The balance between vertical ambition and the need for daylight remains unsettled. Each new tower restates the question of how much power walls should have and how much space should be left for light. The historical and literary examples make clear that walls and light are not just physical elements, but also symbols of human values. In Les Miserables, walls hold people in, while light reveals truth and sacrifice. In castles and cathedrals, walls either resist light to secure power or yield to it to express faith. In the urban battles of New York, walls rose too high and light fought back through law and design. Each battlefield shows the same struggle: permanence against change, enclosure against revelation. Walls demand control, but light always finds ways to challenge it, exposing, revealing, and reshaping how people experience the spaces they inhabit. The war between walls and light is not only found in monuments, cathedrals, or skyscrapers. It plays out every day in the spaces where people live and work. Homes, bedrooms, offices, and even the glow of digital screens all serve as front lines where the same battle takes place, though often on a smaller scale. Each wall and each source of light changes how these everyday environments feel, shaping comfort, focus, and behavior. In the home, walls and light decide whether a room feels cozy or expansive. A living room painted in dark matte colors with heavy curtains and soft lamps creates a sense of enclosure. The walls advance, light recedes, and the space feels intimate. People tend to sit closer, speak more quietly, and linger in conversation. The room supports relaxation, but it also narrows perception. A different living room with pale walls, a bright ceiling, and large windows has the opposite effect. The surfaces reflect light, the space feels larger, and people spread out. Voices rise, movement is freer, and the room supports energy and activity. Neither design is better by default. One provides comfort through enclosure, while the other offers openness through reflection. Families choose according to their needs, but the choice always comes down to how walls and light negotiate control. Bedrooms show the same struggle. A bedroom painted in deep tones with blackout curtains closes itself against the world. The walls feel close, and the lack of light creates a cave-like sense of safety. For sleep, this can be ideal. The body responds to darkness by slowing down, but the same bedroom may feel oppressive in the morning if light cannot enter. The enclosure that comforted at night becomes heavy during the day. A bedroom with pale walls, thin curtains, and light streaming in tells a different story. It encourages waking, movement, and activity. The person inside feels exposed but also energized. In this sense, every bedroom is a battlefield where walls offer containment and light offers release, and the balance must be managed according to time of day. Digital light adds a new dimension to this conflict. Screens bring illumination into rooms where walls try to impose darkness. A person lying in bed at night may turn off the lamps, close the curtains, and prepare for sleep. Yet the glow of a phone or laptop screen floods the space with artificial light. The walls retreat, shadows vanish, and attention is drawn to the digital world. The battle shifts from physical space to mental space. The body lies in an enclosed room, but the mind travels outward through the light of the screen. Bedrooms, once places of rest shaped by darkness and enclosure, now serve as stages for digital light to challenge that order. The tension is immediate. People feel both sheltered by their walls and exposed to the endless brightness of devices. In this way, digital light is not neutral. It is a combatant that alters how the walls of a home are experienced. Workplaces reveal the war in a different form. The open office, designed to encourage collaboration, relies on transparency. Glass partitions, minimal walls, and bright overhead lighting create a space where little is hidden. The walls withdraw, or in some cases vanish, and light fills the entire floor. At first, the effect feels expansive, suggesting equality and openness. But the absence of walls also means the absence of privacy. Every action is visible, every conversation overheard. Light here becomes a tool of exposure, and the lack of enclosure removes the comfort of boundaries. Workers often describe these spaces as distracting or even exhausting. They miss the ability of walls to absorb sound, control sightlines, and provide separation. The open office also raises the issue of surveillance. Transparency, when combined with constant light, allows managers to watch employees at all times. The intention may be to promote accountability, but the effect can feel oppressive. Without walls to resist, light becomes too powerful, exposing everyone equally and removing the subtle protections that enclosure once offered. Some companies have tried to adjust by adding partial walls, acoustic panels, or dimmer zones of lighting. These changes show an attempt to restore balance, to let walls return as combatants in a setting where light has taken too much control. A simple case study illustrates the problem. Imagine two companies with identical floor plans. The first uses the open office model, desks in long rows, glass meeting rooms, and bright fluorescent lighting. Employees sit in clear view of each other, and the space is always filled with uniform brightness. Productivity may seem efficient, but distractions are constant. People wear headphones to create artificial walls of sound, and some seek refuge in small enclosed rooms for focus. The second company uses the same space but divides it with partitions, varies lighting levels, and allows some areas to remain dim. Here, walls return as tools of privacy and focus, while light is used selectively to highlight collaboration zones. Workers in this environment report less fatigue, not because the architecture is different, but because the balance between walls and light is more carefully managed. The everyday frontlines also appear in smaller choices. A kitchen lit by under-cabinet LEDs can feel efficient, exposing every surface for cooking, while the same kitchen with only a pendant light may feel warmer but less functional. A bathroom painted white and lit with bright bulbs may feel clinical, while one with darker tiles and dimmer lighting feels spa-like and enclosed. These are not abstract matters. They are daily negotiations that shape how people use their homes and workplaces. Each choice of wall color, texture, or lighting design shifts the balance between enclosure and exposure, between the permanence of surfaces and the changeability of light. The war between walls and light is most visible in extraordinary architecture, but it is fought just as intensely in the everyday. Homes, bedrooms, screens, and offices all bear its marks. Cozy or expansive, private or exposed, focused or distracted, these qualities depend less on square footage than on how walls and light interact. Every room becomes a front line, and every decision about surfaces or illumination becomes a strategy in this ongoing battle. Walls stand for control. They hold space in place, define limits, and impose order. They resist intrusion and create certainty. Light, on the other hand, speaks for liberation. It crosses barriers, reveals what is hidden, and makes movement possible. In every building and in every room, these two forces confront each other. Neither can exist without the other. A wall without light becomes invisible, reduced to a mass of darkness. Light without walls loses meaning, spreading endlessly with no resistance, no form, and no place to settle. The conflict between them is not only architectural, but also philosophical, because it reflects how people experience life itself. Human beings want both enclosure and exposure. We want rooms that feel safe, where walls provide a shield against the outside. At the same time, we want light to open those spaces, to connect us to the wider world. The paradox is built into our nature. Too much enclosure, and the world feels like a prison. Too much exposure, and it feels like chaos. The tension does not resolve. It is lived through daily. Consider a house on a quiet street. The thick walls of the bedroom give comfort during the night. Yet in the morning, the first crack of sunlight breaking through the blinds feels like a gift. The same person who craves enclosure for sleep needs exposure to begin the day. The cycle repeats endlessly, proof that both desires are real. Architecture has always responded to this paradox. The Gothic cathedral uses stone to hold vast spaces in check, yet floods them with light through stained glass. The walls do not vanish, but they become hosts for light to tell a different story. In contrast, the castle uses walls as pure defense, holding back light, keeping the inside dark and protected. Both structures reflect aspects of human need. One leans toward transcendence, the other toward survival. Modern architecture continues the same struggle. A glass tower in a city may symbolize transparency and progress, but inside, workers pull blinds to reduce glare, craving the control of shadow. A suburban home may promise privacy with thick walls, but owners cut large openings for windows, unwilling to give up exposure to sun and sky. Each choice reveals the same divided desire. Philosophers have often described freedom and control as opposites. Light and walls act out this opposition in physical form. The window becomes the clearest symbol of the balance. It is a wall that admits light. It allows liberation within a framework of control. A small window in a prison cell offers a glimpse of the outside world without surrendering the enclosure of stone. A large window in a modern living room lets in light and views, while still defining the edge of private space. In both cases, the window makes visible the negotiation between enclosure and exposure. It shows that the human condition does not rest in choosing one side, but in holding both together. This struggle extends beyond buildings into life as a whole. People seek walls in the form of rules, traditions, and habits. These give structure and order. At the same time, they seek light in the form of new experiences, insights, and freedoms. A society that values only walls becomes rigid, closing itself off from change. A society that values only light becomes unstable, losing the protection that boundaries provide. The healthiest cultures, like the healthiest spaces, find ways to balance both. They use walls to give shape and light to give vitality. The same applies to individuals. A person who encloses themselves completely may feel safe but cut off from growth. A person who opens themselves entirely may feel free but vulnerable and unanchored. The art of living lies in managing this balance with care. Examples from daily life show the point clearly. A student studying at night may sit in a small room with walls close around, shutting out distraction. Yet they keep a lamp on the desk, a controlled patch of light that allows focus. The walls protect, the light liberates thought. A family gathers in a kitchen with large windows. The sunlight opens the space, but the walls of the room still hold them together, creating enclosure within exposure. Even a city embodies the paradox. Skyscrapers thrust walls upward into the sky, controlling space with force, while streets and plazas allow light to cut through, offering openness. At every level, the war between walls and light describes the shape of human existence. The metaphor reaches deeper when seen as a reflection of inner life. Walls can stand for the boundaries of the self, the protections of identity and memory. Light can stand for awareness, discovery, and the movement of thought. Too much reliance on walls hardens a person, leaving them closed to others and resistant to growth. Too much surrender to light dissolves boundaries, leaving a person without a clear sense of self. The task is not to end the war, but to act as its general. Living well means orchestrating the two, allowing walls to hold when protection is needed, and allowing light to flow when growth is possible. The role of the architect in designing space parallels the role of the individual in shaping life. Just as the architect chooses where to place a wall and how to admit light, a person chooses how much to enclose and how much to reveal. A successful building does not end the struggle, but manages it with grace, allowing both forces to have their say. A successful life follows the same pattern. It does not rest in rigid enclosure or reckless exposure, but in the careful movement between the two. The cathedral, the castle, the glass tower, the suburban house, all represent attempts to resolve the tension. None resolves it completely because the paradox is permanent. What remains possible is harmony. The image of battle is useful because it highlights the active nature of this balance. Walls and light are not static. They push and pull against each other. Shadows shift, surfaces change, windows open and close. The same room feels different at dawn and at dusk, in winter and in summer. The war never ends, and that is its meaning. To live within it is to accept that control and liberation are both necessary, both incomplete, and both powerful. To live well is to become the general, not by conquering one side, but by commanding both. Walls and light will always contest the ground, but in their contest, they create the very spaces where life unfolds.